morning. Welcome to the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship Zoom worship service. I am Sharene Watsen, your celebrant for today's service. I am joined by Debra Smith, who will give today's sermon, and our minister, the Reverend Sara LaWall. Our RE coordinator and storyteller extraordinaire, Jem Emerson Page, is also with us this morning. In the service today, we will continue to explore this month's spiritual theme of stillness and how we create stillness of heart in a time of turbulence. We will explore the balance of longing for a still heart while the world cries for real action. We are so grateful for so many volunteers who help make our Sunday services so meaningful. Today, Debbie Foster is serving as our tech host. We have music from Carrie Bastian, Mike Lemieux, William Emerson Page, and 2 collaborations between our choir and the choir from the UU Church of the Palouse. Nancy Harms and Gwen Reed are serving as our Zoom ushers. A big thanks to all of you. Whether you are zooming in from down the road, across the city, from another state, or across the ocean, you are welcome here. Whatever faiths you have known or religious practices you embody, if any, you are welcome here. Whoever you love and however you identify, you are welcome here. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I want to take a moment to welcome those newcomers among us. We know it takes a lot of courage to check out a new community, and we're so glad you have joined us today. We invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat so our community can warmly welcome you. And please fill out a newcomer card. We'll post a link in the chat so we can keep you up to date with all that is happening in our fellowship. We offer lots of options for gathering in virtual communities, from meditation to yoga to social hours. And I want to take a moment to remind everyone that next weekend, we are taking a Sabbath Sunday. There will be no Sunday worship service. So instead, please join us Saturday afternoon, December 19th at 4 p.m. for a special family-friendly holiday service featuring many of our booth singers and musicians. Then take Sunday as your own personal Sabbath, and then join us again on Monday, December 21st at 7 p.m. for our annual winter solstice service. Don't forget to pick up your holiday worship gift bags, complete with candles for solstice and Christmas Eve. Bags will be available now through Christmas Eve at the south entrance at booth. As we gather, even virtually, we want to acknowledge that the land upon which our church and homes exist is the ancestral land of the Shoshone, Bannock, and Paiute tribes, who inhabited a vast region, including much of Idaho, before they were rounded up and forced to leave. This land has a long history, long before colonization. We offer this acknowledgement as an uncomfortable truth. May this truth discomfort us, and in our discomfort, may we move through the world bringing justice in every way that we can, listening to the truths spoken to us by Native American peoples, making space for them to re-inhabit this place and giving them back the resources they need to heal their communities. Let us take a moment to breathe together. Fill your body with breath, knowing that our breath connects us to one another and to our bodies and to our planet. Our breath offers the opportunity for stillness, to tune in to our spiritual center, to listen deeply to our heart's own longing. Thou art the song of my heart in the morning. Thou art the dawn of truth in my soul. Thou art the dew of the roses adorning. Thou art the woven whole. Thine is the grace to be steadfast in danger. Thine is the peace that none can destroy. Thine is the face of the need-riven stranger. Thine are the wings of joy. Thou art the deep to the deep in me calling. Thou art a lamp that lights where I tread. Thy way is steep past the peril of falling. Thou art my daily bread. Thine be the praise of my spirit uplift. Each week, we light the chalice, a symbol of our faith, a beacon of hope, love, and justice. We join in this lighting in solidarity and community with hundreds of other Unitarian Universalists lighting chalices today in homes and in virtual worship services, reminding us that we are connected to one another and to a larger community of faith and love. We welcome our young chalice lighters to ground us in our hope for a brighter future. If you have a chalice nearby, you are invited to light it with our young chalice lighters, Conley and Greta Watsen. As they light the chalice from our home, you are also invited to share in the chat where you've lit the chalice this morning.
And in this season of Advent, a season that invites stillness and waiting, we light the third candle on our Advent wreath, the candle of joy. In igniting these lights, we remind ourselves of the sparks of joy that light our path, even in the darkest of times.
Tonight will also mark the fourth night of Hanukkah. We light candles on the menorah, which symbolize both the possibility of miracles and the rededication of faith, hope, and love in times of hardship, despair, and depression. Because the Hanukkah lights are kindled at sunset today, we light 3 for the nights that have passed. I'm especially proud to kindle these lights in honor of my own ancestors, the Weiners, the Schneiders, the Slaters, and all who came before them. In light of the events of this week and the hateful vandalism at our Anne Frank Memorial, let these lights remind us that the light of love burns bright in this community always, and we are everywhere. I offer this traditional blessing for the kindling of the Hanukkah lights. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushenu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the Hanukkah lights. All these flames, glimmers of light reminding us that we need not be afraid, and instead we can welcome the stillness inherent in the dark and listen to what it has to teach us. With our collective chalices lit, our Advent wreath and menorahs in all of our spaces, we offer you this call to worship from Monica Jacobson Tennyson.
What is it that calls you here, that calls you onward, that calls you inward, that calls you homeward?
What is it that gives you the power to make that change, to ask that question, to take that journey?
What is it that says you have done well, that asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, that holds you up in hard times?
It is relationship, the beating heart of our faith. It begins when we share this hour, our truths, this air, our hearts. Come, let us worship together.
I invite everyone to cozy up for our time for all ages this morning. I'm very excited about our story this morning. I'm not gonna lie. I wonder, how many of you have ever had a problem? Maybe you have a problem trying to learn certain things, like tying your shoes or doing long division. Maybe the problem is how to make sure that you and your sibling or whoever you live with aren't fighting all day long, and that sometimes you can have fun and enjoy each other. A problem is a difficult or unwelcome or sometimes harmful thing that you have to solve or overcome, or sometimes just minimize, because some problems don't go away. So I want to know, how many of you have ever had a problem? And I want you to show me your wiggly fingers if you have, because it's something to celebrate. Let me count, let me look at our gallery and count. Wow, everyone has had a problem. That's interesting. I wonder if that's just our church community. I don't think so. I think that all humans have problems. Some of our problems are just for us, trying to learn something tricky, trying to figure out how to say the right thing. But a lot of our problems are community or society problems. They're bigger than us. It means that it happens because of something that we all learned, a way that we're expected to treat other people, or we have this community problem because of how an important resource is set up to be shared or not shared. Racism and violence are a problem that everyone has to face, even if you don't have to endure the pain of it. We all have to face it. Climate disaster too. Same with making sure everyone has food and medicine and safe housing. Even though these problems belong to the whole community to solve, we feel them in our own hearts and minds and bodies. We feel discomfort. Maybe our discomfort is just thinking about how some of our neighbors don't have a house to sleep in tonight. Some of our neighbors have to sleep on the street tonight. That's really uncomfortable. And sometimes it's tempting to only want to make the discomfort go away instead of trying to focus on solving the problem. This makes me think of that song, We Shall Overcome. It's a beautiful song. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. There's hope. We can choose to focus on the problem. But what do you think it takes to overcome a problem? What do you think it takes to sit still with our discomfort around a problem? Our story this morning is going to help us think about our response and how we respond to problems. It's called, What Do You Do with a Problem? It's written by Kobe Yamada, and it's illustrated by May Besson. I made that sound French. I don't know if it is French. I don't know what happened, but one day I had a problem. I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it. And I really didn't like having a problem, but it was there. See? There is the problem. Why is it here? What does it want? What do you do with a problem? I thought. I wanted to make it go away. I scowled at it. I tried ignoring it, but nothing worked. It got a little bigger. Can you see where they live now? They live next to a lighthouse, off in the distance. I started to worry about my problem. What if it swallowed me up? You see how the plants are bending? There's a strong wind now. What if my problem sneaks up and gets me? That thought made the problem very big. Do you see how big that problem got with that thought? What if it takes away all of my things? Oh man. I worried a lot. I worried what would happen. I worried about what could happen. I worried about this and I worried about that. Do you see how the problem is changing? Do you notice all around it are compass points? What else can you see in the problem now? And the more I worried, the bigger my problem became. I wished that it would just disappear. I tried everything I could think of to hide from it. I even found a way to disguise myself, but it still found me. Do you think it works to hide away from problems? How does it make you feel when you try and hide from them? The more I avoided my problem, the more I saw it everywhere. I thought about it all the time, and I didn't feel good at all. I couldn't take it anymore. This has to stop, I declared, in my most authoritative voice. Maybe I was actually making my problem bigger and scarier than it actually was. After all, my problem hadn't actually swallowed me up or even attacked me. I realized I had to face it. What kinds of tools are they using to face it? They've got a lot of stuff here. Cogs and resources. This is an interesting way to solve this. Oh, I missed a page. Oh. So even though I didn't want to, even though I was really afraid, I got ready and I tackled my problem. Literally. And then this is what they made. When I got face to face with it, I discovered something. My problem wasn't what I thought it was. I discovered it had something beautiful inside. How does it look different than it did before, now that we're close to it? My problem held an opportunity. It was an opportunity for me to learn and to grow, to be brave, to do something. What does it look like they're doing? What are they doing with their problem opportunity? It showed me that it is important to look closely because some opportunities only come once. Now I see problems differently. I'm not afraid of them anymore because I know their secret. How does it look like they feel? They look much less worried than they did before. Every problem has an opportunity for something good. You just have to look for it. Now they're on an adventure. I wonder, what are the problems that you are facing right now? What emotions do you feel when you think about the problem versus what emotions do you feel when you work on your problem? We've got fear, we've got anger, we've got sadness. We might even have happiness when we work on it, excitement. Problems are really uncomfortable. And we need to think about what are the tools that we have to help us find stillness in this discomfort instead of fighting or resisting it. Maybe your tool is just a deep breath. Maybe it's moving your body. Maybe it's getting a really big hug from someone you love. Children, you are invited to stay here and listen to the rest of the service. And join me afterwards in this main room. You're not going to leave this room for our fellowship time. We're going to play a game where you need some drawing and writing utensils, just so you know. And adults, you are welcome to stop in and participate as well. Youth grades 6 through 12, just so you're ready, your youth chapel is after the service as well, and there will be a separate Zoom room for that. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dem. Lovely. When we give, we say yes to something we value. We say yes to supporting the greater good. We say yes to saving what we love. We say yes to making space for stillness. We take up an offering each week to say yes to the values of our UU faith and yes to self-sustaining ministries of this fellowship and the ministry of our monthly plate partner. Together, we use these gifts to serve with ever greater love. To make an offering, you can go to our website at boiseuu.org and click Give in the upper right corner, and then enter your gift in the Sunday offering box. You may also give using the Give Plus app on your smartphone, and your mailed-in checks are also welcome. 25% of our unpledged plate offerings will go to the Reverend Elizabeth Green Pay It Forward Fund, or PIF, at the end of the month. If you would like your gift handled differently, please use the special contributions box and write us a note in the comments. The PIF Fund helps support our own booth community for short-term emergency financial assistance in times of need or crisis. It is available to support booth members and friends through the generosity of those who donate. We thank you in advance for your generosity. The offering will now be received. Each week, we take time to acknowledge the many joys among us and to grieve our many sorrows and losses so that we might lift that burden for each other and receive the blessing of this community. As we begin, please hold these joys and sorrows in your heart. Stanley Zuckerman wanted to share with joy that in this time of sorrow, he has two best friends with whom he can visit safely once a week. Also, at home, he gets great comfort from his dog, cat, and wife. Eileen Gettings' youngest sister passed away at the age of 57 in California this past week. Amber Lynn Hazeltine's mother passed away. As we acknowledge our joys and sorrows and receive the healing balm of music played by Carrie Bastian, I invite you to write your joys and sorrows into the chat box and take a moment to read what is shared in this gathered community. We hold the joys and sorrows of our beloved community. Alongside our silent prayers, we hold close to our hearts. Gathered up with the joys and sorrows of our nation and our world, we hold them all close, breathing them in and sending forth love.
Our reading this morning is by the Irish poet Theo Dorgan, and it speaks to the deep yearning for a sense of regenerative peace that can be a balm for the turmoil of our days and a catalyst for continued growth. The Promised Garden. There is a garden where our hearts converse at ease beside clear water, dreaming a whole and perfect future for yourself, myself, our children, and our friends.
And if we must rise and leave, put on identity and fight, each day more desperate than the last and further from our future, that is no more than love and respect shown to all blocked from the garden that we own.
There is a garden at the heart of things. Our oldest memory guards it with her strong will. Those who by love and work attain here, bathe in her living waters, lift up their hearts and turn again to share the steep privations of the hill. They walk in the market, but their feet are still.
There is a garden where our hearts converse, at ease beside clear water, dreaming a whole and perfect future for yourself, myself, our children, and our friends. Just like in the story Jem told, our country has a problem. We're being torn apart by competing visions of what our history means and what our future should look like, how inclusive it will be, and whether we will be able to dismantle systems that for years have led to inequality and injustice towards marginalized people. Our denomination is asking its members to examine the ways in which we might be complicit in delaying progress towards that greater vision. This promised garden, so to speak, is given expression in our 8th principle, wherein we affirm and promote the goal of, quote, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions, end quote. I sometimes struggle to do the work our leaders are asking us to do, dismantling the oppressions in myself and the systems from which I benefit, because, well, I benefit from them. Or at least society would have me believe that I benefit from these hidden oppressions. This is the story of my journey towards growing closer to that vision and how I navigate between being comforted and being afflicted by this call to greater justice. Conversations I've had with the racial justice Wednesday morning coffee community have convinced me my story is not unique. We white folk can be pretty clumsy in our attempts to atone for centuries of biases and faulty assumptions about our marginalized brothers and sisters. This is a story of how I began to understand the social forces that are roiling our society and my own place in that struggle. I might have titled it Confessions of a Casual Bigot, but I allow myself the kindness I might extend to anyone who didn't know any better at the time. Perhaps you have a similar experience to the one I will share with you today, as you have tried to come to terms with your own fumbling and well-meaning ignorance. When I was a young white woman of privilege, I worked for a smallish women's clothing company that was run by men, and it was very patriarchal. I had been selected to be part of a management trainee cohort of 3, myself plus 2 recent college graduates, like me, but male. One of these young men was brilliant and arrogant. The other, Barney was his name, was smart and likable. I was smart and arrogant, but female, so my job was to make the coffee. But I was promoted regularly, however, not as regularly as Barney. That really brilliant other guy quit after a year because his boss couldn't see how brilliant he was. After a few years, our little company was purchased by Levi Strauss & Company. Now the company I worked for was a small division in a $4 billion global corporation. The patriarchal structure of this purchase company was softened by their compliance officers who monitored behavior, but it was still run by men. They were enlightened men, for the most part, descended from the original founder, Levi Strauss, a Jewish immigrant who found that outfitting miners with sturdy clothes was more profitable than mining for gold. His company was successful, and it had a reputation for giving back to its community. Legend has it that after the 1906 earthquake, the company kept its employees on the payroll while it rebuilt its factory. That generosity was still in existence when I worked for them back in the 1970s. Each separate facility, from its headquarters to its factories all over the world to its distribution centers, had a fund to distribute to local charities. Employees' donations were matched 2-to-1, and they gave employees time off to volunteer. Each facility had a team that would coordinate those efforts. My years at Levi Strauss & Company really propelled me into the world of what we back then called philanthropy. I became a leader in the division's volunteer team, and we did some pretty successful fundraising for our community. My colleague Barney would make light of these charitable endeavors, dismissing us as do-gooders. Of course, by this time, Barney had been promoted to upper management and practiced what I dismissively called golf club philanthropy. This is the kind of charity undertaken by successful men who play golf together and have stock portfolios and who decide where their calculated for tax benefit donations should go. But Barney's charity and my own efforts had one overriding thing in common. They both came from a power dynamic that allowed the giver to feel superior to the receiver of the charity. It would be another 40 years before I learned how condescending and disempowering this model of philanthropy is. Well, I continued working at Levi's for well into the 80s, at one point taking a position at the Levi Strauss Foundation, where I was learning what good philanthropic work looks like, that it follows the lead of and empowers the communities it wishes to help. But if I want to be honest, I still saw it as a way to burnish my resume and to feel better about myself and what I could afford to give away to others. I did not see myself in the others I sought to empower. I saw myself as apart from, different, meritorious. It was after the births of my 2 children that my husband and I got tired of the resume burnishing and all the getting and spending it took to live in the Bay Area, that we decided to sell everything, pay off his law school debt, and go live on an island in the Pacific. We thought we'd be welcomed in Saipan, but we were just another expat white family in nice government housing on the slopes of Mount Tapachau, high above the actual islanders. Theirs was a culture that had seen waves of empire builders, from Spanish conquerors to German colonizers to Japanese occupiers, and we were just the latest wave of adventurers who were looking for a new frontier to shape to their own liking. Here's one embarrassing example. At one point, I and a number of other American expats decided to organize a Girl Scout camp. There had been Girl Scout troops on the island for years, but I learned from someone that no girl had ever received a single Girl Scout badge. I had to remedy that. So a group of us devised a week-long camp during the week of Easter break, whereby over 100 girls would each be assured of earning at least 2 badges. For this story to make sense, you need to know that this island imported all of its teachers from the Philippines, well-trained women who could not get work in their own homelands and who left their own children behind with aunties to teach the children hundreds of miles away. Well, we presented our ideas to these teachers who showed their deference to our group of powerful white women by never looking us in the eye, by keeping their heads bowed, and by saying yes, ma'am, to all of our ideas. Would they be willing to volunteer their time to help? Yes, ma'am. Would they be able to work the full day every day? Yes, ma'am. They seemed very pleased with our plans. On the morning of the first day of the camp, we did have over 100 girls between the ages of 6 and 16 ready to earn badges in sewing and shopping and personal fashion and grooming. We had donated fabric, meals, and snacks. All of the powerful white American women were there, but where were their teachers? Those talented and hardworking Filipina women? Oh, one of the girls explained, they all go home to see their children over Easter week. But why, what? I grasped for understanding. Oh, they could never say no to an American. That would be embarrassing. We got through the week, and some girls did achieve a few badges and maybe even learned some things of value. But this powerful white woman is the one who got schooled. How could I, in my do-gooder zeal, be so culturally insensitive? How could I have lived on the island for a year and not know of this essential fact? That there were women for whom volunteering was a luxury, women who gave of themselves in a sacrifice I could not comprehend, had made no attempt to comprehend. I was ashamed, and deservedly so. I had not equated their humanity with my own. That's not precise. I equated their humanity. I did not appreciate how severe was the gap between their power to control their lives and my own. This is privilege. This episode from my life illustrates, it seems to me, one of the problems with the impulse to say all lives matter, or to insist that I'm not prejudiced, I treat everyone the same. Well, my life was fundamentally different from the lives of those Filipina teachers. Our lives are not the same, and it is a form of violence to fail to recognize this. My assumptions were a form of denying the truth of their existence. I came to understand that in remaining silent about their intentions, they were actually trying to help us save face, so that the realization of our ignorance would not occur in front of them. They were politely maintaining the very hierarchy that oppressed them. For how many years have people of color had to protect us white folks from our own blithe ignorance? It's painful to awaken to the reality of our arrogance. Fast forward many, many years, ones that conspired to further heal me from my arrogance and separateness. My marriage ended. I had to go on welfare to get food for my family. I almost lost my home to foreclosure. But through all of this, I had my beloved community of the Boise UU congregation. Eventually, I was in a better place and I was ready to give back, as we say. This time, I hoped with more humility. I became active in the social justice ministry at Booth, and thanks to the generosity of the congregation, I was able to attend a workshop held at the UU Church in Bellevue, Washington. It was here that I heard for the first time a quotation that has become a kind of lodestar that guides my behavior as I undertake to live with the fullness of the eighth principle. You've no doubt heard the quotation. It is attributed to the Aboriginal Australian artist and activist Lila Watsen, although in her humility, she says the sentiment arose out of a conference of women in Nairobi, and she doesn't take credit for the quotation. She said, or it is said, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." I recognize the attitude she was criticizing. It was the old do-gooder power dynamic where the person of some privilege undertakes to solve problems for others because they are perceived as poorer, less socially connected, or differently abled in some way. I had rejected that attitude too, so I didn't think I needed to be liberated any further. I wasn't even proud of my humility anymore. I didn't need to be further liberated from my cultural blind spots. But that's the thing about cultural blind spots. We're blind to them. And then came the series of UUA common reads, the first of which was Just Mercy, where Brian Stevenson explores the criminal justice system's unfairness to the people of color. And then Reverend Dr. Barber's The Third Reconstruction and the idea of intersectionality and the common human rights needs of all working people, of all genders and identities and colors. And then we were encouraged to read The Warmth of Other Suns about Blacks escaping the Jim Crow South. And then The New Jim Crow that explains the history of policing and its connection to slave catcher bounty hunters. And then the murders of Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, Sandra Bland, and of course, Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. And in the middle of these murders, I began to learn about redlining and inherited poverty and a strategic disinvestment perpetrated against Black communities. And then I began to learn, really learn about LGBTQ+ issues and experience. And I confronted my ignorance and biases and came to understand even more deeply that gender is a social construct, and I needed to be liberated from my presumptions. I needed to be liberated from my smug, liberal comfort. And I needed to awaken to the many ways I have benefited at the expense of others who didn't win the birth lottery. I started reading political philosophers like John Rawls and Ta-Nehisi Coates. And I'm grateful to another teacher, Nicole Hannah-Jones, the leading voice of the 1619 Project, published by the New York Times. And I am grateful to the American Academy of Poets who regularly turn over their poem a day emails to LGBTQ poets and poets of color that I would otherwise never encounter, and without which I would be bereft of great art and insight. But alas, I have so many layers of insensitivity and lack of awareness from which I have to be liberated. I don't think I will ever find peace. I despair of completing the project. And my church isn't making it easy for me, for us. Progressive leaders of the church are demanding that we continue this work of sloughing off the skin of privilege. Church leaders keep bringing it up, shoving it in our faces, causing us discomfort. But our church also provides a balm because it assures us that together we are doing good work, the work that leads to the promised garden, the beloved community. We won't complete this unmasking of privilege and unmaking of power hierarchies in the near time. I won't complete the self-work I must do in my own lifetime. But I take comfort from each of you for the help you give me, that we give each other on this journey as we hold each other accountable. And so we can take solace from the lines from the poem. There is a garden at the heart of things. Our oldest memory guards it with her strong will. Those who by love and work attain there, bathe in her living waters, lift up their hearts and turn again to share the steep privations of the hill. They walk in the market, but their feet are still. There is indeed a promised garden. It is in our deepest ancestral memory, and yet it resides in the future. It is a promise, after all. Those few who by love and work, this spiritual work of confronting the egotism that interferes with true spiritual growth, we get to the garden. We rest for a while in its peace, but not for long. In the poem, those that arrive at the garden lift their hearts and turn again to share in the poverty and privations and struggles of the world. We cannot remain in the garden behind a wall. We must re-enter the world, benefiting anew from a different perspective, the perspective of a more enlightened and aware vision, a vision informed by a realization that it is not enough to make vague appeals to our common humanity. We need to work for a just apportionment of power, and that means assessing the ways we try to hold on to power and position. When that stanza offering the promised garden repeats at the end of the poem, it now comprises an enlarged vision of who constitutes our children and our friends. It includes all children and all humanity. Truly, until all of us are liberated from the illusion of separateness and tyranny of self-importance, none of us are truly free.
Thank you, Debra. In this month of stillness, we will take some time this morning to be silent and still together for about 2 minutes. We will begin and end with the ringing from the bowl. Get comfortable and close your eyes if you prefer. Breathe with me. Fill your body with breath. Breathe into your sacred space. Breathe with this beloved community filled with loving kindness. Breathe with wholeheartedness. I offer you these questions as possible inspiration for your meditation, or you are welcome to be still and listen to what is calling you in the silence. Is your identity rooted in busyness or stillness? And which one do you want to be rooted in? Could it be that the one thing missing from all your resistance and justice work is self-reflection and rest? Our prayer this morning is by Sara Horton Ludwig. Spirit of life and love, light within and without, mystery from which we all have emerged, within which we live and die. Be with us now as we allow ourselves to drop into the silence and stillness at the center of our being. As people of faith, we seek to live in a spirit of love, a spirit of community, justice, and peace. And yet, in so many corners of the world, both far and near, we see divisiveness and hate. If we look deep within ourselves, perhaps we will even find those shadow energies there too. We struggle to respond to the outer world and our inner dramas in ways that manifest love. At times, we may fear that love will not be strong enough. At times, we may question whether love really is at the root of all things. In this world, with so much struggle and suffering and discord, we may struggle to hold on to our faith and love, knowing that if all things come from the one source we proclaim, that source must somehow hold hate as well as love, violence as well as peace, evil as well as good. This is the mystery within which we live and die. These are the questions that haunt our days and nights, and yet we are not without hope. Our struggles and our questions testify to our longing for peace, for love. Our very longings are born out of that mystery we dare to address the spirit of life and love. In the stillness and silence of our own heart, we read the imprint of love, created not by our own will, but planted there for us to discover. By what or whom we cannot know, and yet it is there, a clue, a talisman, a beacon, a light within. May it keep hope alive, even as we dwell in the mystery. May it guide us all as we seek to act wisely and well. May it help us be vessels of compassion for one another and for our world. Amen.
Out here on the street, there's no one left to meet. The things that were so sweet no longer move my feet, but I keep trying. I keep on trying. All that I want is stillness of heart, so I can start to find my way out of the dark and into your heart. I got more than I can eat, a life that can't be beat, yet still I feel this heat. I'm feeling incomplete. What am I buying? My soul is crying. All that I want is stillness of heart, so I can start to find my way out of the dark into your heart. to be more giving? Where's the love? What happened to forgiving anyone? All that I want is stillness of heart, so I can start to find my way out of the dark and into your heart. All that I want is stillness of heart, so I can start to find my way out of the dark to your heart. All that I want is stillness of heart, so I can start to find my way out of the dark into your heart.
Beloveds, hold the hand of someone next to you or put your hand on your heart. Feel the life pulse beating there and remember there is a garden at the heart of things. There is a vision of a better world where all are recognized as sacred beings, where there is no other, and where when we speak of our children and our friends, all are included. Go in disquieted stillness. Be well. Amen.